We've been talking all week about dependence, and today we're going to talk about the challenges. All that and more on today's Antidote.
Stay tuned for today's Antidote, brought to you by the Renegade Success Network. Today's Antidote features a healthy dose of thought-provoking insights and information for business owners, entrepreneurs, leaders, and nonprofit professionals. Each day since March of 2020, this program has offered that one thing to help you continue on your own unique pathway to success. And now, Renegades, we bring you Bob Graham and Tom Brush.
Hey, Tom, good morning.
Good morning.
Just so people are watching, we are recording this.
Yes. Just so people are, well, this is a recorded show, although only a few minutes before the show actually airs.
Yes. So it's a weird day. We just have things that have to get done, and it just worked out. Thank God for technology that works with us.
Yes. Although your thing keeps getting cut off a little bit.
Which thing?
Your opening little do.
I'm gonna have to wait another second or two.
Yes, that's okay.
Okay. Do I owe you a do?
Not anymore. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's Antidote, our daily broadcast and podcast. Each week we have a conversation around a topic. This week's topic, as Bob mentioned, has been dependence. Last week we talked about independence.
Not the little kids that you take tax write-offs from. That's not what we're talking about.
That is dependent, not dependence. A little bit difference. The CE rather.
But if you say it quickly, it sounds like dependence.
Okay. Or if you listen less intently, it could sound like that. Fair enough.
Ding, ding.
Yeah. So anyhow, as we have our conversation, we welcome your thoughts and ideas around the topic that we're discussing, because we know that it adds value to our show. And at the end of the show, Bob and I will each offer our one thing, our today's antidote. That thing that we hope may help you today, or maybe somewhere down the line, to take your next step along your own unique pathway to success. And so at the end also, if you have one thing you'd like to share, please feel free to share it, because we know that when we put our value out in the world, there's someone that is going to benefit from it. We may not know who, we may not know when. We just know that it is now out there for others to take advantage of. So before we kick into our show, although I should say, whether you're watching us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or
LinkedIn
Live is where you can comment, because we will respond to your comments. And we enjoy them because we know they add value to our show. So before, though, we get into our discussion each day, we share our celebrations. So, Bob, what are you celebrating today?
I'm going to celebrate the power of books.
Books?
So
in the world of the internet?
No, I was at a house last night, and there was a book sitting on the coffee table, and I picked. No, it wasn't that book.
Wasn't this one?
No, it was not.
Okay.
It was a book by someone who would be the least likely person for me to read a book by. It was about how women should interact with guys. And I picked it up, and I was just looking through, and there was a section about an area where I've struggled. And reading these words from a guy talking from a woman's perspective made me understand something that it had boggled my mind. And it was like, duh, now I understand. So I've written books, as you know, I've edited books, I've read thousands of books. This was one where it was like, oh, this is why we have to put a book out there in the world, because we could change one person so simply. And I say that also, Tom, to inspire you to write your book, because I know we're moving towards the end of summer, and you had a commitment to have it done by, I believe, the end of August.
Yes. I wondered if that was part of the message you were going to share. Although it's interesting. You said that was like the least likely book that you should read. Although if you read a book written for women about how women should understand men, wouldn't men then understand women differently?
That's how and why I read it.
And it was written by a man?
It was written by a man.
That's always a fascinating thing.
Stefan de Bussier, I think it is.
So whether you have
And it was
a
called,
woman,
I think the book was titled, just so you know, and if there are women out there reading this, He's Lying, Sis, I think is what it was called.
what was it called?
He's Lying, comma, sis.
Ah, well, it's fascinating.
So not a title that would draw my attention normally.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe me, because I like to know what other people are thinking, but I don't know that the average guy would have picked that up and looked at it.
Although, again, if the average guy was actually thinking and said, what's a book that women are reading to try to better understand men so I can better understand why they are interacting the way they are? Seems like that might be the book.
This was very helpful in me figuring out why I interact the way I interact. So even though it's about describing men to women, as a man reading it, it was like, this guy was in my head. Like, I'm reading sentences going, well, that's not, yes, it is true. No, that's not, yes, it is true. That's not, yes, it is true. It was painful. And I kept reading. I mean, it was probably 10 pages of just in your face, because I volunteered for it to be in my face.
And you were open to it being in your face. Some people could have read it and be like, that guy doesn't know what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Or, I'm just going to do what I'm going to do. They'll figure it out.
Well, the person whose coffee table this book had been on was someone who has talked about him before. And the things that she said he shared have been very valuable to just hear.
Sure.
So it was like the guy had credibility.
Yeah, if we want to better know how to understand bosses, read a book written by a boss.
Right.
Or an owner, or an entrepreneur. Yes. Now, again, it's just one person's perspective and what's real for them. It doesn't mean that it's the same for everyone. Yes, we are all unique, as we talk about all the time on here. All right.
What are you celebrating?
So I'm celebrating. I hadn't really, you brought this up this morning, and I hadn't thought about this. So we have to make a trip to New York for a celebration.
Your family.
My family, yes, for the celebration this weekend. And plans got shifted around a little bit. And rather than driving up there by myself tomorrow morning, I get to drive up there with my oldest daughter. So it'll be some good quality time with her on our way to New York. So that's what I'm celebrating tomorrow. I probably should have waited.
Will she put on her music playlist and just listen to music the whole way, or will she have headphones on the whole time, or will she text the whole time, or will you actually have like daddy-daughter talk time?
Well, it'll be interesting because the job that she works is like a very early in the morning. She's working at a summer camp. And so
done that, loved it.
Very early in the morning to very late at night. And so I have a feeling she'll probably be sleeping part of the way. And that's okay.
Still quality time.
It's a 4-hour trip. So, I mean, I'm not sure she's going to sleep for 4 hours. So we'll see how that
looks. Come on. You kid yourself.
And I probably should have saved that for tomorrow. But okay. Anyhow, that was my celebration.
Okay.
All right.
I like that one.
So let's now dive into our topic.
That's a great idea.
Is dependence and the challenges. It's interesting to me because I think that so often when we think about dependence, that's all it's like that. It is the challenge. It's not really the benefits. I think what we talked about earlier.
It's a negative, right? I'm dependent on X, Y, or Z. I'm dependent on this thing or that thing.
I don't like that word. I don't use that word. So I should try not to use that word. So.
That's why I did.
Yeah. Appreciate that. And I think so this almost would seem to have been what we could have started talking about on Monday. So because we're renegades, though, we would do something completely unlike anyone else might want to do it, of course, because we're all different.
Wow, starting with the challenges is actually a good idea. Might have to try that one week and see how that changes it all up.
That's an interesting thought. So my thinking of it is it's fascinating. I think one of the things about the challenges is what the outcomes become based on your dependence. I think it's interesting to see. I think there's a lot of, the easy example is kids today who seem to be completely dependent on their parents for anything and everything they do. Way back when we were growing up, like my parents, outside of like Little League, my parents didn't organize every time I got together with a friend. Actually, rarely did. We got on the phone, called each other and said, hey, a group of us are going to go play basketball down at the school. Do you want to go? And as long as it was good with our parents, we would go. Or, you know, hey, we're going to get together down in the block. Do you want to, going to hang out at Joey's house? Is that all right? And I think that's not the way things are planned today. Not passing judgment on that one way or the other. Although I think what happens is that the kids miss out on that and they become almost too dependent on their parents. And it's fascinating being at all these youth lacrosse tournaments that I'm at to watch the interactions between children and their parents. And, you know, the kid walks carrying nothing and the parents got like the backpack and the stick and water, and which is why they all have these carts that they roll around all over the place because they've got all this stuff and nobody's carrying it. And the child is just walking ahead, not worried about anything. So it's an interesting, and I think that's the same though at work. You know, if we become completely dependent on a staff member or our supervisor to do everything, what are we getting the opportunity to learn from the things that we do or say or the actions that we take? Which, as you know, I love when we take actions because we have the opportunity to learn from those actions. And if you never take some of them, you don't always learn how to make it work or how to figure out, oh, okay, this worked the way I thought or it didn't. And then I move forward with what I might do differently.
Wow, that's a lot packed in there. You were on fire.
Well, I wanted to start and go first because I was following your little, if anybody checked it out, Bob yesterday commented on our show because we had recorded it. And
you're not bitter.
What's that?
You're not bitter.
I'm not bitter at all. I thought it was fascinating. I got an inside look into, like, we don't talk about that. And so I got to look into, you know, one of the things you said was you always go first, which is true. And so I thought, okay, well, I'll go first to give Bob a chance to pull together his thoughts.
I thought going second is easier, but I think it's actually harder. You have to really be paying attention.
Well, and I noticed
as we know, it's not my strength here.
Yes. And I noticed you weren't nodding your head, or it's kind of like the book that you wrote. Like that was, you were writing your book on how to interact with your partner on a broadcast. Fair?
I love it. So let me talk about dependence and share my thoughts in terms of the challenges. I think one of the challenges is knowing where we stand. I think you can teeter on both sides. It's like a seesaw. You could be too dependent or not dependent enough. I know for me, I get moments where I feel like I'm too dependent on this person or this client or this situation. And I immediately want to flee and try to get that back to center. But rather than getting it back to the center, it goes off to the other side. You and I were in a group that I was leading for a couple of years, and I could see myself doing that at times. I was too involved and dependent on it. And then there were times where I would just totally check out. And I was trying to find that balance. And I think that's part of the challenge with dependence. You know, if you have one client that accounts for 99% of your business, or if you have one team member who does 90% of the good work, it's hard not to rely on that person really consistently. But you also have to think, okay, if that client were to have a really bad family emergency and shut their business down, or if that team member had a family emergency and had to leave for 3 months, how would you resolve that? And I think that's the question that we often don't ask ourselves. And I think the other area where dependence can be challenging is depending on ourselves, trusting ourselves to be able to solve or figure out a situation. I know for me, that's the level of dependence where it's like, I need to rely on Bob here. I've got something going on right now that is, I've got to rely on Bob's situation. I've talked to several people about it. I've gotten different opinions. Ultimately, Bob's got to depend on himself. What's right for Bob? And I think that's the thing with dependence. It'd be so much easier to say, Tom, here's my situation. What should I do? And you go, do X. And I do X. And then okay, if it goes wrong, it's on Tom. And I think a lot of us have that kind of, let someone else decide for me if it matters, because then I can't be wrong. And I think that not depending on ourselves in that situation, I can solve this problem. if you came to me with the same problem that I have right now that I'm trying to solve, I could give you the advice like that. But when it's me, I have to really think through it. I have to trust my instincts. I have to trust that I have the skill set to make that decision.
Yes. I mean, there's
Threw a lot at you, didn't I?
I was just processing it. It was, I think it was interesting. It was one of those things that it reminded in me really that one of the challenges of dependence is what happens when the person you are dependent or the thing you're dependent on goes away.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're faced with, okay, I'm not sure I really know what to do. I'm working with a client now that it's an executive director that's been with an organization for, I think, almost 30 years. And clearly in that time, they have amassed an amazing amount of knowledge, experience, and perspective around the organization. And there is no way that they could ever sit down and share all of that with whoever comes next. And I think this is pretty typical with businesses and organizations, is you kind of become dependent on the person who has the most knowledge, experience, or perspective, or the one who's willing to share it the most. And then when that person isn't there anymore, sometimes organizations forget how to move forward. And I think that's a fascinating thing. You know, you become so dependent on the administrative assistant who does all these things that you don't have to then do. And then if they leave, you're like, well, I really don't know how to do them. What are we going to do? And I think, you know, it's a part of every organization. And you, again, could never know everything that someone else knows, has experienced, or the perspective they have. And so being understanding that challenge is in front of us, which is one of the beauties of every challenge, is there's the opportunity to maybe do it a little bit differently, as long as you're open to, okay, we were dependent on that person. Now they're not here anymore. What are the things that we get to do next? So while it creates challenges, it also provides an opportunity if we're willing to consider them.
And it doesn't always involve people. I worked with
Correct.
a company once that was dependent on a law. And when the law changed, their whole business model had to change.
Yeah.
Or
Or a
I
computer
worked with
program.
a company one time that was involved with certain financial things. And when the regulations started to shift, they had to shift because they were dependent on certain things. Just like, think of how many companies are refinancing mortgages, and that's how they make money. And right now, with interest rates going up, it's really hard to refinance a mortgage. It wouldn't make a lot of sense for most people. So if you're a company that does refis, you're probably adjusting to a new model right now. You may be looking at new homeowners or homeowners who are in transition, and that dependence can be, while it's going on, I think it can be really useful. But also having a little bit of, okay, we're relying on this a lot. What happens if this goes away? Because as you know, everything, if you're the only company doing X, there's going to be competition. It's coming. If you're a nonprofit and you're the only one that deals with pancreatic cancer, I can tell you within 2-3 years, someone else is going to form some organization that's going to start going after pancreatic cancer. It's just the way of the world.
Absolutely. So, Bob, as we talk through this and we get near the close of our show, what's your one thing?
I think when I think about the challenges around dependence, it is acknowledging them and having what I think of as an escape hatch as much as possible in the back of your head. You know, what if this thing I rely on isn't there anymore? How would I, not that you have to plan it out like to the nth degree, but just thinking about it, being aware of it. I think it also makes you grateful for those things you're relying on.
Sure.
Which isn't the worst thing in the world.
No.
How about you?
So I think mine is that I think the more dependent we become on something, the more challenges we create.
Ooh.
And at the same time, if we are open to it, the more opportunities that are available.
Mind blown.
Well, you know, if you think about it, is the more dependent, you start out and you're like, okay, you have something new. when the phone came out, awesome. It was new. Lots of things going on with it. I wasn't still 100%. Some people still had rotary phones. Some people were like, nah, I'm not going to text or email or surf the web or do whatever. Surf the web. There's an old phrase. And the longer we have it,
going back to the 1990s.
The longer we have it,
the www.
Yes, the more dependent we become on it. Till we get to the point like, what would I ever do? What would I do if I didn't have this? And you can easily see all the challenges that create it, larger and larger every day. And then there's the time when this goes away. And someone out there is thinking about, what do I do differently so that I'm not burdened with this phone, that what would happen if I lost it? Which is why the cloud was created, or why so there are all these other opportunities are out there based on the more dependent we get on someone and the challenges we see if we were to ever not have that in our world.
Folks, if you're struggling with dependence on something and you're trying to figure it out, you can come to our Renegade Success Network website, which for Tom, I will say is www.renegadesuccessnetwork.com. That's www. Make sure you put all 3 W's in, because otherwise it might not get there. www.renegadesuccessnetwork.com.
Not the http://.
Well, and then somehow the world brought slashes, which are just slashes. They call them backslashes.
I know.
And they're not.
Right.
They're forward slashes.
It's just a slash. It's not forward.
I agree with you. I'm bitter about it. It's one of my pet peeves. If I hear a radio ad and they're like backslash, I'm like, no.
All right, everyone. If you have one thing you'd like to share, please feel free to share it in the comments. Or you can always join us inside our Ring of Renegades Facebook group, where we'll be talking about this conversation all week. And tomorrow is Bob's favorite day.
Yes.
We get to share our discoveries of the week around dependence. So we look forward to seeing you inside our Ring of Renegades Facebook group, or we'll see you tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. Eastern time, for our next episode of today's Antidote. Have a great day, everyone.
Hey, embrace the renegading you and think through those challenges of dependence and how you might overcome them. Who knows? Tom says, rightfully so, there are challenges and there are opportunities. Which one do you want today?
Have a great day, everyone. We'll see you soon. Thanks for listening to today's Antidote, powered by the Renegade Success Network. The Renegade Success Network helps you confidently create your own unique pathway to success. To learn more about the Renegade Success Network and how you can take your next step, follow us on Twitter, connect on LinkedIn, or join the Ring of Renegades Facebook group. For full details on how you can join our community, go to renegadesuccessnetwork.com. Embrace the renegade in you.